Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning, David. Welcome to podcast number 3, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Good morning, David. Another week has gone by. Looking forward to this morning's podcast. We've got quite a few things to talk about today. Every week's an exciting week in the real estate business these days.
It really is, David. And you know, it's so important to do these market updates on a weekly basis just because, you know, the market is changing. And I remember I said that we're feeling a little bit of a slowdown last week. And you looked at me like I had 3 heads.
Well, you've got to remember, we always feel it after, like 6 weeks to 2 months after you guys and as a realty brokerage do, because you're doing deals and we look at closings. So you're looking at your volumes and numbers when people sign an agreement of purchase and sale. We sort of focus more on, what is our closings this month? So usually we're closing 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months after the agreements are signed. So we will feel the lag, any lag that you feel, but we just generally feel it later. So we're like going crazy in our office this week in particular. Month-end closings, everybody is just swamped. So when we hear you say, it's slowing down, everybody's like, what? Not in our office.
How are the new deals coming in?
Well, we're getting, and I do, monitor that a little bit. That I did feel a little bit of a slowdown last week, but you have to look a slowdown to what? We were getting, 10, 15 transactions in a day. And, that slowed down for a few days. I noticed it was more like coming in like 7, 8 for a few days. And then all of a sudden we get another day on Friday and we got 15 deals in again. And then, only, 5 or 6 on Monday. So it's not always an even everyday thing, but I look at it every single day, to see what's going on. So I haven't really seen any slowdown yet. Our volumes for closings are quite high for April, and May is going to be an extremely busy month in our office as well. So if there is a slowdown, maybe we'll feel it in June or July, but so far not really seeing signs of it in our office.
Right, you guys are always a few weeks behind us, and it's just a natural progression of the deal cycle.
Yeah, and it's also hard for us to measure. I know you and I have talked about it too in our office. Like, I'm never sure when we're busy. Some of it I know is just market conditions. It's a strong market, we're going to be busy. But sometimes, are we just getting more than our market share in our firm? Because, I'm out there doing, seminars and webinars, and my partner Jonathan Hacohen is out there doing things, and we have these relationships with mortgages, with mortgage brokers, and relationships with real estate brokerages like yours, and we get a lot of referrals. So are we getting more than our market share? It's hard to assess when we're busy. Is that why? I'm sure it's partly why, but anyways, we don't complain when we're busy. We only complain when we're not busy, right?
Absolutely. It's always a double-edged sword. But listen, let's get into some of these statistics. So month over month for number of showings, down 23%. And I mean, our front end staff is definitely feeling it. The phones are not ringing as much as they were before. Number of solds, again, down 23%, according to Broker Bay, which is our appointment system, which about 70% of the brokerages use. Great piece of technology, really. Look at the year over year numbers. I mean, we're double-digit appreciation, right? So really, these numbers are just coming down from the crazy frenzy that we had about 6 weeks ago, and they're normalizing a little bit more. But what does that really mean? Normalizing, it's still extremely busy. It's still a really strong seller's market out there. We're just not seeing the 30, 40 offers being registered on each individual property like we did at the very height, at the very peak of the market.
Yeah, and that's always an important thing. Like you see changes, but you're comparing it to what?
Exactly.
You're not necessarily saying, well, what did we do last April 28th, what was going on then, because there's some relevance in looking at that too, but it's the market changes from week to week and month to month, so you're comparing it to what, and everybody forgets what a normal market is. Like, what is it? What's a normal market? Like, is a normal market when there aren't multi-offers, there's enough supply on the market? Like, I don't even, like, when was that? Like, it seems like we've been in a market with short supply for quite a long time now.
We have been, and what you're really, the key statistic to a stable market, looking at the absorption rate, right? And the absorption rate is listings coming onto the market, how quickly they're actually being consumed by the consumer, right? So I think a stable market is an absorption rate of 3 months on average, and I mean, we've been well below that for decades, so it's still a very strong seller's market.
Right. And that's the GTA, right, that you're really looking at?
Yeah, I mean, the trend right now is that the further away from the GTA that you go, the more multiple offers that you see. And it's a price point and an affordability factor, right? So we're seeing a huge trend of people actually moving away from the GTA or investing away from the GTA just because the numbers make more sense.
Well, let me ask you a question. You as the owner of a brokerage that's based in Mississauga, right in the heart of Streetsville, and you've got a big stable of agents out there, and I know they're not just farming Streetsville, Mississauga. Like, they spread their wings out. Are you encouraging them to do transactions all over the place?
I mean, it's a market factor, right? We started really focusing very heavily on investors and starting to teach our realtors and really offer a lot of training on how to convert the regular clientele more into investors and start thinking like investors. So when you go down that path, like, you have to go out of the city and out of your comfort zone to find properties that fit your investor criteria, where the numbers make sense, where you can do duplex conversions, where you're closer to other colleges and schools and universities, and where these properties cash flow. So just by the normal nature of what's happening out there in the market, we see a lot of our agents transacting in St. Catharines, in Kitchener-Waterloo, in Cambridge, in Innisfil, in Barrie, right? Some of our agents are going as far as Aurelia. And it's really, they're taking their local clients and they're just helping them get into thinking as an investor and offsetting their portfolio and diversifying. And it's great to see, and something that we really encourage.
No, that's great. It's the world gets smaller and smaller as technology improves. And
Absolutely.
a lot of time it was, I put up my shingle as a realtor and I'm farming this little area, this little section of Mississauga or Streetsville or whatever it was, but it's no longer the case. There's no reason to limit you. You might concentrate, you might be an expert in certain areas, but why not spread your wings? The technology is available to assist you, even if you're doing it from your home.
Yeah, and a lot of our agents are buying real estate themselves, like they're investing themselves, which is phenomenal to see, right? I think if you walk the walk and talk the talk, then you're just better equipped to address and teach your clients to do the same. So it's been a phenomenal journey and a phenomenal market, and even in today's conditions when things are really crazy, there's still lots of opportunities out there. Our agents are doing lots of business. They're helping a lot of different types of clients get into the market. We're seeing a lot of first-time home buyers come into the market as well. There's still a lot of opportunities out there. And it's all about having the right knowledge and the right advice and hiring the right agent that can help you accomplish your goals.
Yeah, that's so true. There's an agent makes such a difference. And, I always get asked, maybe it'll be a topic for another day, about doing, acting for a private transaction. And I just recently did a blog on private transactions. And like, I generally argue against it. Like, I don't want to do it. We do it occasionally, mostly if it's between parties that know each other really well, between relatives or close friends or something like that. But other than that, I really discourage it. Anybody that asks us to do it, like, they're not saving money. I can't give advice on market conditions, whether they're getting a fair price or anything like that. There's so many advantages to using a realtor, and not just a realtor. There's a lot, as you and I know, there's lots of realtors out there, but they're not all created equally. And realtors that know what they're doing and that are trained, probably, that have access to the resources that you provide, for example, in the support and the training and things like that, they make a huge difference. And not just in the price you're going to get. Price is always important, but in the overall service, the overall experience, staging properties and understanding market conditions and dealing with multi-offers and timing the market and things like that. So I generally encourage anybody to use a realtor and get a good qualified realtor that's at a good place, like Sutton Summit, and they're trained properly and they have support.
Yeah, Dave, I mean, you're right on. There's 55,000 realtors in the GTA, and they're far from created equally. And a lot of times when our agents transact with another realtor from another brokerage, we're the ones that are providing guidance and advice and thought leadership on how the offer should be structured, clauses, conditions. We see it all the time, and it's something that I'm very proud of, and I think it just raises the overall bar in the industry in general. It's great to see that, but make sure when you are looking for a realtor that the realtor that you hire is a full-time realtor, that they come from a nationally branded company, because then they're going to have the support behind them to really be able to give you the right guidance, that they have the right training, and that there's a quality of standard behind them as well. Take your time and make sure that you feel comfortable. And number one, make sure that there's that they're knowledgeable and how they're able to represent you.
And that's great advice, and it's so important, and we see it all the time. Like, we can see how agreements of purchase and sale have been negotiated, and the mess that is sometimes initiated by one realtor and it's cleaned up by another realtor, and how messy some of these agreements can get with things crossed out and things. A lot of times it's just the idea of certain clauses sometimes isn't bad necessarily, and it's not always a negotiating point, but sometimes they just make a mess of putting it down, and they're not doing it properly, and then you see a more qualified realtor cleaning it up, which is good for both the buyer and the seller, because we don't want messy agreements and agreements that people can't live up to. I find it the same thing in my industry too. Like, there's a lot of lawyers out there and a lot of real estate people that are doing real estate. And I hate it when we're on the other side of a transaction with a lawyer that does some real estate, but he also does litigation and he does other things. And when I try and get a hold of him because there's an issue, he's in court and he's not available, and he doesn't do this every day. And it's very frustrating at our end. So I love it when we have a lawyer on the other side of our transaction from a good firm, a good lawyer that does what we do, that does high volume residential real estate, commercial real estate. So when we do have an issue on the other side, we can work together to resolve the problem. Because my focus, and I know we've talked about before, we're always focused on how do we get the deal closed. Issues come up all the time, problems come all the time, but our focus is how do we fix it, not how do we not fix it and stand on strict legal principles. How do we get the deal closed? We don't serve anybody's interest by not getting a deal closed.
Yeah, it's a small industry, and at the end of the day, we teach our agents that everybody has to work together for the best interest of the client.
Absolutely.
So David, when there is a little bit of a shift to the market, right, and the market changes a little bit, what happens in those situations? Because I mean, there is buyer remorse, right? Like, I mean, we're starting to see it in some pockets, in some neighborhoods more than others, but 6 weeks ago, buyers overpaid for some of these properties compared to what's really happening in the market today. And like we said, it's still a strong seller's market, but we're coming down from that really high peak that we were at. A lot of people that transacted in that peak, did pay a little bit more than what the properties are worth right now. So what happens if buyers change their mind? What happens to the deposit? What happens if there's a firm offer and that buyer is now saying, you know what, I slept on it, I changed my mind, I'm not going to drop off the deposit tomorrow? Is the deal automatically dead?
Well, it's a great question, and if we have 3 hours, I can give you a full answer on the podcast, but I'll try and give it as brief as I can. It's interesting because we hear a lot of discussion, buyer's remorse and or seller's remorse too. There's no such thing. Like, there's no such legal concepts. You cannot rely on, oh, I changed my mind, I made a bad deal. An agreement of purchase and sale, and for real estate, first of all, has to be in writing, and that's why we put it in written form with standard agreements, and we add certain clauses that are negotiated. But it's a contract. It's simple as that. It's a contract, and there is no legal concept of buyer's remorse in the law of Ontario, with one exception. When you're buying a brand new construction condominium, in the Condominium Act, there's a built-in 10-day cooling off period. So a buyer can sign an agreement of purchase sale for new construction for condo, not a detached home or something. It has to be a condominium project because it's under the Condominium Act. And then they can make a good deal, make a bad deal, make any deal they want. They have 10 days to change their mind. That's the only buyer's remorse they're legally entitled to do. So at the end of that 10-day period, they can say, no, thanks, I changed my mind. I want to buy it in a different project. I don't want to buy it all. Whatever the reason, doesn't matter. They don't even have to provide a reason. They just have the right to exercise their buyer's remorse right. But that's the only one, okay? For anything else, there's no such thing. They're signing an agreement of purchase and sale, and it's a contract, and everybody has to live up to that contract. So if they do not live up to any element of that contract, then they are in breach of the contract, and there are certain ramifications for being in breach. So, for example, I think you were saying the deposit. If they don't deliver the deposit, they sign an agreement that says the deposit has to be delivered within 24 hours of acceptance.
Correct.
Okay. So they have to, that's an obligation. They have a binding contract even without delivering a deposit. But the first element, the first condition that a party has to live up to under that agreement is they promised and agreed contractually to deliver a deposit within 24 hours. And it'll say whether it's certified funds or wire or bank draft or whatever it is, but they have to live up to that. And if they don't, there's consequences. They would be in breach of the agreement.
Excellent.
Hopefully that answers the first part.
It does. So deposit has to be delivered within 24 hours. There's a terminology in the agreement that says timing is of the essence. How does that play into that role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every standard agreement purchase sale has that clause in it, that time is of the essence. So what that means, there's certain elements in a standard agreement of purchase and sale in the printed form, and then always in conditions that are added as well, where certain things have to be done by a certain specified date. And sometimes it's even more specific, by a certain time. Something might have to be delivered, by 5 p.m. on a certain date, or a condition has to be waived by 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. on a specified date. So any thing in an agreement purchase sale where there's a date specified, time is of the essence. It's not a suggestion. It's an absolute. You have to live up to that. If the deposit has to be delivered within 24 hours of acceptance, we know the specific time that the agreement was accepted. It may have been accepted at 11 p.m. at night. So now you've got till 11 p.m. the next day to deliver that deposit. We know, and times of the essence. I mean, it's not a suggestion. You can't be 5 minutes late. You can't be an hour late. It has to be by that time. We have a certain date that we're going to close the transaction, our completion date. If it's supposed to close on April 28th, it's not a suggestion. We have to close on April 28th. There's consequences if you don't. It's not, well, if I can't, I need another day or two. No, you don't have a right. You have to close on that time. We have to search title by a certain date. Conditions have to be met by a certain date. Right. So time is of the essence for all of those dates. And if you don't meet it, you're in breach of the agreement of purchase and sale.
Yeah, we actually had a very interesting situation happen when we were in the peak of the market. And of course, when we were in the peak of the market, hour by hour, the market was changing. It was changing quickly. So one of our top agents did a deal on Sunday, I think at 2 p.m. And of course, the deposit has to be received within 24 hours. The next day, which is a Monday at 4 p.m., we still did not receive the deposit for the transaction that happened on Sunday. And the realtor called me and said, David, we want to cancel that deal because we now have received another firm offer for $100,000 more than the offer we accepted on Sunday. And of course, as you know, David, I contacted your office. We had a full discussion. We always lean on your firm for advice in these situations, just to make sure that we're 100% above level, and we give the right advice to all parties involved. But based on the clause of timing of the essence, and the deposit needs to be received within 24 hours, we signed a mutual release for the deal that happened on Sunday. And the seller got another offer accepted that was, I think it was just over $100,000 more. And again, this comes down to quality of representation, having the right agent on your side, and being able to navigate these tough environments so that you come up ahead. And it's a perfect example of how we were able to do that for our client.
Yeah, and that's a great example. It's mind-boggling that it's $100,000 difference in that short a time period. Like that's a uniqueness of the market right now. There's, the law applies the same, when we were in a different market, when this deal isn't going through because they're in breach of the agreement. Now they got to go put it back on the market, and they might be sitting there for 6 weeks, 2 months until they could sell it to somebody else. And maybe they don't get the same price. They're getting a lesser price. So that creates, different issues for it. So, it's unbelievable. They were able to put it right back and get that much of a different price. It really says something about the current market.
It does. And again, I think having the right agent, having the right team, having the right lawyer makes such a big difference to the outcome of what the end result will be for your client. And we're talking about building relationships, not just selling one house or buying one house. We're talking about creating lifetime relationships with your clients, and it makes such a big difference over the long term to hire the right people and make sure you have the right team.
Well, that's one of the key roles of a real estate agent, and I always talk about this every time I do a webinar for agents. It's not just the agent's skills themselves. So I deal with so many of the agents in your office, and you've got some great, first of all, they're good people. Like, they care about their clients, and that's one of the keys to being a good real estate agent. But they're also right up on market conditions. They're up on training. They look for trends. They consult with you as their broker to see what's, when there's a uniqueness. It's amazing how many different things there are and uniquenesses there are on different transactions. But part of their main role, the way they add value, is to make sure that their clients have a good team of other experts around them too. So they're referring them to a good mortgage broker. They've got a good home inspector. They've got a law firm like mine that we get referred to a lot of your clients and your agents' clients. Like, we're all part of the same team. All of us say, that buyer is our client. Like, we're all, it's the same, it's one client, but we share that client. So we're part of the same team. So it's important that we get along and establish relationships as well with the real estate agent and the mortgage broker and the home inspector. And we get to know them and get some comfort level with them and know that they're in good hands. Now, that's something that you guys get to do as realtors. We're not generally in a position to be referring that out, to putting that team together. Because generally the buyers, the sellers contact real estate agents. They don't call lawyers first and say, it's amazing. In my 36 years of practicing, I could think maybe 3, 4, 5 times maximum someone has called me and said, can you refer me to a real estate agent? It just doesn't work that way. But from you guys, it's always, you get the contact. I need a mortgage broker. I need an inspector. I need a lawyer. You guys are in a position to do that. It adds tremendous value to your business.
It does, and David, I've been on both sides of the coin there, where a buyer comes to you and says, "Hey, I have a law firm that I've worked with in the past," and um, it's really hard to steer them in a different direction, but you always want to, right? Because that when you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer, and when you need a lawyer, you need the best lawyer you can absolutely have to get you out of those tough situations and to give you the right advice. And um, not all law firms are created equal. There is a big difference in representation, how certain lawyers deal with issues, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of law firms out there can close a transaction, but when issues arise, when it comes to customer service, when it comes to going the extra mile, that's when quality of representation really matters a lot, and having the right team is absolutely paramount.
Well, I agree with that comment. Like we bank on the fact that most transactions close relatively smoothly. We have to search title. We deal with title issues all the time. We deal with some timing issues all the time. But, for the most part, transactions do close smoothly, but there's a certain percentage of them, and I never really sat down to do the math, but it might be 5% or 10% that start to go off the rails. And that's where it really makes a difference in terms of who your legal representation is going to be and how they're going to handle that situation. Are they going to panic? Are they going to know what to do? Are they going to be practical in their advice? How are they going to be able to deal with the lawyer on the other side? And part of it is including the real estate agents in the process too. When things go a little bit off the rail, there's a lot of things that the real estate agents can do. So we don't want to get you out of the process. We need you part of the process
100%.
as well. But that's when we really earn our fees and can make a difference. It's when things are a little bit off the rails, and how do we find a way to still keep it on track and get the transaction closed when it's supposed to close.
100%. So David, going back to the whole time is of the essence, and not receiving deposit checks, and people not adhering to those time difference, can you explain to us what the difference between the word void and voidable is?
I think voidable means potentially a transaction might be voidable because of certain reasons, okay, certain non-performance of the contract. Void, it just means it already has become void, or something will become null and void if certain things don't happen, okay? So you see that type of language in condition clauses. Like if a condition isn't waived by 5 p.m. April 28th, the transaction will become null and void, and the deposit will be returned to the purchaser with interest, or something to that effect in a standard type of clause. So there again, there's a time element that something has to be happened. And I always encourage people to be careful with the clauses they use, because sometimes with a condition clause, it'll say if nothing happens and there's no waiver provided, or nothing happens by 5 p.m. on April 28th, the transaction is firm. Or it might say if nothing happens, the transaction is null and void. Or it might say that you have to provide a notice that you're waiving the condition by 5 p.m., failing which the transaction becomes null and void. So you've got to be careful as an agent, understand which clause you're picking to use and everything, because we have to look at the strict language of that agreement to make sure that you follow it. So if it says if you do nothing, what happens? Does the transaction terminate if you do nothing by 5 p.m.? Or does the transaction become firm if you do nothing? It depends which clause you picked and put in the agreement of purchase and sale. So everybody has to be careful about that. So if that time element is not met and the performance doesn't happen by that deadline, then the transaction would become null and void. Okay, so the transaction is over. And so that's clear. So I'm not sure if you had an issue with the word voidable, but that would, if you have a clause like that, it means it's just a different tense of the word void. It's voidable if those elements aren't met and the waiver is not produced by that time, the transaction becomes voidable.
Right. So voidable is basically has to be
a suggestion, right?
Yeah. So voidable has to be initiated by a party, and void is, either happened or happens automatically. where the contract is.
And it's always a question of fact. Okay, was notice provided? How was notice provided? If it had to be provided, and was it provided on time? And the time is really important. Like I said, if it's 5 p.m. and you give the notice at 5 after 5, even though it's 5 minutes late, time is of the essence. That's significant, and you don't have a right to be late. Time is of the essence. You have to be on time. So I always encourage everybody, I'm sure, and I know you do, as the head of a brokerage like that, to make sure that the agents are meeting those deadlines.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you can't, extensions might be available, and you've got to look at that. But any extension you're not entitled to it by right. It's something that has to be negotiated and agreed upon.
Right. So if you buy a property 2 p.m. on Sunday, it's not the next day before end of day you need to receive the deposit date. It's within 24 hours of the offer being executed, which is 2 p.m. on Monday. And a lot of agents get that wrong. And they have to be careful, right? Because we've seen examples, like I've given before, where there's a significant difference in to the bottom line of the buyer and the seller for that reason as well.
Right. Because the seller is taking their property off the market. And in a situation like we're in now with multi-offers, they're choosing which one they want to go with. So a lot of times it's price driven. And you and I have talked about it before, it shouldn't always be price driven. You want to make sure your buyer has an ability to close, so you don't get into these situations. You want to qualify the buyer too, so you're not necessarily choosing the top price that's being offered. But as soon as that's accepted, everybody else that's been offered, those offers are now gone. And it's sometimes just a lost opportunity to a seller. So it's important for a seller as well to know that they've got a firm deal, because they're chasing away a bunch of potential parties that would buy their property that move on to the next one.
Absolutely. And recently I came across a very unique situation where a cottage property was being sold that had knob and tube wiring. And the listing agent set this property up to receive multiple offers. And one of our agents submitted a conditional offer on the property. And the listing agent was extremely annoyed because it was a very strong offer price-wise. None of the other offers were close. So the seller opted to work with this conditional offer. And after reaching out to quite a bit of lenders, there just wasn't an appetite to take on the risk of the knob and tube wiring. And the agent was really upset that, our agent submitted a conditional offer. And I had a conversation with this listing agent, and I said, well, let me ask you this question. The other two offers that were firm, are they cash buyers? Well, I don't think they were. Okay. And I said to him, so how are you representing the best interest of your seller? Because if you accept a firm offer that doesn't have the ability to close, because those people are going to be experiencing the same issue with the mortgage. I'm like, so what that you've accepted a firm offer if they don't have the ability to close? Did you ask the right questions? Right? Isn't it better that you accept that conditional offer, and we'll figure this out together if you work with us and ensure that come the closing date, we're going to close on this transaction and there's going to be no issues to the seller. And you know what? There was a long pause in the telephone conversation, and the other agent said to me, I didn't think about it like that. So really interesting, but I mean, there are a plethora of issues that need to be addressed, need to be really thought out. And just because you receive a firm offer with a deposit doesn't mean that come closing date that the property is going to successfully close. And sometimes, especially when dealing with really unique issues like knob and tube, sometimes it's better to get ahead of it, to really understand what that issue means for both buyer and seller at the very beginning, to have a meeting of the minds, to really sit down and put your heads together and figure out how are we going to make sure that come closing date, this property closes. And sometimes dealing with conditional offers at the very beginning makes a lot more sense.
Well, it's a great story and great advice, because it's where you got to look at the practicalities and the big picture in a situation. Because if a property has an issue, that one buyer is pointing out, that same issue still exists with the property. Right. And the seller is going to have to deal with it no matter what it is. It could be a small little sale of a condo in a building that has high-tech plumbing. And if it's an issue to one buyer, it's going to be an issue to every single buyer. So you've got to, as an agent, you got to get ahead of the game and figure out what's the answer going to be, no matter who the buyer is. I mean, how are we going to deal with that high-tech plumbing issue or whatever the issue is? Every resale property has its warts somewhere, and it's a question of the appetite of the buyer to accept it. So I think it's great advice. I hear you're sort of educating another real estate agent, but I think that's what you have to do sometimes, because they're not seeing the big picture, and you're letting them know they're going to fall into the exact same trap with the next buyer, and the one after that. The issue's there. So I think you did the right thing. You're getting ahead of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, it was an interesting conversation, but when I really broke it down and explained it to the listing agent from our perspective, and I said, yes, you know what, we are doing some of the really hard, heavy lifting right now, but we're doing it for the protection of your seller. Like, our buyer has a full intention of closing on this transaction, but this is the issue that's coming up. And I said, unless the other two offers are cash buyers, which you indicated to me that they're not, you're going to be running with the same issue, but you're going to be doing it a day before closing. You're going to be extending. And imagine the grief that your seller is going to be feeling then. And he's like, you know what, David, you're right. We'll extend the condition. You have our full cooperation. And we'll work with you. And I said, great. and that's the difference that, knowing and educating your realtors has in the marketplace. And I love getting involved in situations like this, because it just ensures that there's a good outcome at the end of the day for everybody.
And it's adding value. It's earning your commission. And you don't get a greater commission because you resolved a difficult problem or potentially a problem on this one. Fortunately, in your business, you'll have a lot of transactions go very smoothly, and sometimes the agents don't have to do a lot, and they'll earn their commission more easily than they would on other transactions. But every once in a while, you've got to be creative. You got to think a little bit outside the box, and that's where you make a difference. And that's how a real estate agent gets a good reputation, because they can do the difficult transaction. They can get you through a difficulty in a transaction to get it closed, and get it closed on a timely basis, and find a way around it. So that client is then so happy to refer David Gorski to his friends and relatives and colleagues, because he came through, and this was he'll tell the story. This was difficult. We had this problem, and David navigated me through this and got it all done because he anticipated. He had to tell the other agent what to do. It's a great story, and it builds your reputation, and it spreads, and that's why you have success like you do.
And it's great to help our agents in such a big way, and to really be there for them, and to help them navigate these situations. It's something that I enjoy doing tremendously, and it's amazing. And the nuances in this business, as you know, David, they never get old, and there's always something. And that's why it's great to have your office, and we have these conversations almost on a daily basis. So I thoroughly enjoy them.
Well, it's mutual. It's always interesting for me to hear things from your point of view. It helps me in my practice. I relay the information that I get from you back to the other lawyers in my office, and our staff too, because we have to try and be up on it and everything. And it's amazing, all these years in practice, and you think transactions are routine, and thank God most of them are, but it's amazing how many transactions have something that comes up that's unique or a little bit different to them. And these issues come up. You think everything, with all the volume of transactions we do, we've seen and heard of everything. And it's things come up that are novel all the time.
Yeah. And I think that's going to lead to our podcast number 4. I think where it's going to be a continuation on our podcast number 3 of what really happens when a transaction doesn't close, and what happens to the deposit money, and where the funds sit, and how long the whole processes take. And and what are some of the remedies and damages that occur. So I again, it's one of those topics that can take hours and hours to discuss, but I think it's really important, David, that we peel back some of the layers and go into some of this stuff. And I can't wait, because it's a very important topic for buyers and sellers to know and to really understand, because it really does put a lot of context into how our legal system works, how buying and selling property really works behind the scenes, and what happens if things don't go as planned. And again, having the right team makes a really, really big difference. So stay tuned for podcast number 4. We will definitely go into more details as well. But David, talking about our businesses, right? Because when we put this podcast together, we said, we both run extremely successful firms, and we wanted to give back and then sort of talk about our businesses a little bit as well. So I wanted to talk today about relationships, and how important are relationships in business.
Well, it's really important, and you and I talk about it all the time, and we did touch on it a little bit even in today's podcast, how important it is for you to get that team around you that you trust. And that's where the relationship building goes to, because not only to have people to refer, but to really understand and have confidence that because of the relationship that you create over time, that those parties are going to come through and support what you're doing and be open and honest about it too, and provide suggestions and have that comfort level. And and I think the example of my law firm, Kormans LLP, and Sutton Group Summit Realty is a tremendous example in a relationship that's gone on for decades already, and continues. But part of it is because of the openness and the exchange that we have. If we see something going wrong on a transaction and the agents from your office, we're not looking to throw an agent under the bus or to say, oh, your agent didn't draft this properly or your agent screwed up. Like, that's the last thing we're looking at. Our focus, how do we fix that? We get in touch with you and the agent and say, okay, here's our problem. Here's our situation. How do we fix this? How do we get this without playing the blame game? The blame game doesn't serve anybody well. Let's fix the problem together, find a solution. Everybody comes out on the other side looking good. And you can only do that when you really establish a trust and a confidence in the parties that you're dealing with in business. And it's critical to my firm to have a strong relationship with a brokerage like yours and a personal relationship like I have with you. It's, that's why you can pick up the phone and call me about something quickly, or I could call you about something with confidence that we're going to get the right information. And then if I don't know the answer, I'm going to say, I don't know, David, I got to figure this out and get back to you because I'm not sure, right? It's easy for me to say that to you because you're not getting off the phone and going, oh, what good is Korman? Like, he doesn't have every answer the second I need it. No, you trust me that I'm going to, if I don't have the answer because something is new or novel, we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it goes much beyond your relationship with my relationship. It's the fact that every single one of my realtors has your personal cell phone number, and can lean on you and your advice, whether it's 9 p.m. on a Friday evening or 3 p.m. on a Sunday. You guys have always made yourself available to us, and it's made a huge difference in how we transact and the advice that we're able to give our clients. Because one of the things that Brian and Jack Ellis have done when they owned the brokerage is they had a 3-minute callback policy. Okay. Now, Jack Ellis has owned, I don't know, like 6 or 7 different real estate brokerages. I mean, the guy is an absolute genius. I mean, I still talk to Jack on a regular basis, and I still learn from him. And it's great to have his support and be able to rely and tap into his resources. But by having these successful brokerages and going down the path of leading them and operating them on a daily basis, they realize that if they're able to get involved in escalations very, very early on, they're able to de-escalate them and bring them to a conclusion in a relatively short time period without them over escalating, right? And we really continued that trajectory. So we have a 3-minute callback policy. So if one of our agents has an issue, they get in touch with management support instantly. And together we're able to resolve those tough situations and make sure that the situation gets under control very, very quickly, and that we have a resolution to our clients, and they have a resolution in turn to their clients extremely quickly as well. And it's made a huge difference in the number of lawsuits and the number of negative situations that our realtors encounter. And having access to your law firm in that timely manner has made a huge difference to us over the last 32 years. Because I know you said decades, but we've had a 32-year relationship, I believe, with your law firm. And,
Right.
it's mind-boggling when you really think about it.
No, it really is. And there's a great history. And it's great that you mentioned, Jack and Brian, who ran the brokerage there. And it's the same thing at my end. My partner, Jerry Korman, who just retired a little over, I guess, 15, 16 months ago, was part of that history going back as well. And he had that relationship with Jack, and he had the relationship with Brian. And then I'm sort of the next generation that came along, to continue it. And we have another generation, with my partner, my current partner, Jonathan Okoan, who takes it even to the next level with the way he has relationships with agents and brokers and stuff. And we have a team of young associates that are just absolutely fabulous and get that and understand what we're trying to do. And they're going to continue it. And they're doing the same thing. And, that's really critical. We've our two firms really parallel each other in that way. And that we've been intertwined for 32 years and grown together is really remarkable. It's a testament to both, and the trust and the relationship and the give and the take, and we evolve together. And we try and do the same thing with other parties, as I'm sure you do as well, with other people that are part of your team. You can only hope that everybody has the successes that our two firms have in dealing with each other.
Yeah, we've actually introduced other key partners to the brokerage, and we always try to model the relationship we have with Kormans with other key partners we're bringing in. It's been absolutely amazing, and we're very, very thankful for that relationship. So, David, let me ask you this question: how can you leverage relationships to grow your business?
Well, it's relatively simple, I guess. It's, I never think of myself as a salesperson. You would think of yourself as a salesperson. I think of myself as someone that, I'm a lawyer. I practice law. When clients come to me, I help solve situations and protect them and get transactions closed. But part of our business doesn't grow unless you do have an ability to market. And my father was in the menswear business. He was a fabulous salesman. He could sell anything. He happened to sell men's clothing, but he could have sold anything. He would have been if he sold real estate, he'd be the best real estate agent. He happened to choose menswear, and he was one of the top salesmen. To watch him in action, to sell somebody and convert somebody. And I always used to watch him, but I could never do what he did the way he did. But yet part of what I do, we have to market our firm and let our firm grow. So I have a difficulty compared to some other people. I can't say, David, can you please send me a couple deals? I want you to send me some transactions. I never sort of directly say that to people. I just find those words difficult. Other people have no problem expressing themselves that way. My way of doing it is I'm just going to service the hell out of my clients and try and give them the best advice, best service, best resources. Make sure I got the best staff, because they're not always talking to me. So we hire tremendous people. We got tremendous staff, that's supporting us and that care about our clients. So we do it that way. Let's do it that way, and it'll naturally happen. And we still get ourselves out there with we're doing podcasts, and we're doing webinars, and we're doing things like that, where we have social media, we have other ways of marketing. That's not just David, hi, we're a little slow today. Can you please send over a couple new transactions for us? I have difficulty doing that. You have a different viewpoint maybe about how you grow a business.
You know what, David? I mean, I completely agree with you. If you're true to yourself, right? I mean, when I was in real estate, when I was selling real estate actively, I always had the mentality that I'm going to educate the buyer or seller to a point where they're comfortable on making the decision 100% entirely on their own. And there's a process to that. There's a time, you have to spend some time with them. You have to really coach them and educate them. But that's always been my goal, wearing my real estate hat, is to educate the buyer or seller to a point where they're 100% comfortable making a decision by themselves, right? And it takes time to get there. And I would always give them my opinion as well, but my opinion always rests on the fact that, would I buy this property? And I'm a huge investor. I always look at real estate from a future resaleability point of view, right? So it never failed me. And I think clients feel that you have their best interest in mind every step of the way, that they can call you as somebody that can give them advice, right? And when you take that position and you really give them advice that comes from the heart, that's where you get the growth in business. That's where they refer their family to you, they refer their kids to you, they refer their neighbors to you, because they know that you're going to treat the people around them just like you treated them, and you're going to give them advice from the heart, advice that's pure, and you're going to always, every step in the way, protect their best interest, right? And running the brokerage is no different. I treat my realtors exactly the same way, right? Give them the absolutely best advice. They're my family, and I want to take care of them, and I want to make sure they have the tools, the resources, the training, that they can be the best in the business as well, and provide the best advice to their clients in turn. So it's been a very, very easy transition for me to step into the roles of a broker owner, and it's been extremely enjoyable as well.
And I think you benefit from being on the other side of it too. So you knew, as when you were a real estate agent, you knew what you really needed from your brokerage. How could when it was, let's say, Brian and Jack in the day, how could they support you? How did they help you? What was it that you needed from them? And then you take it to the next level, because now it's 30 years later. We're in a different era, different technology, different needs. The agents are looking for different things, but you're on top of those things too. So you're just still thinking, what's next? Not what worked in the past, but what do we need for the future? And that's part of, we do the same thing. We've got to be ready for what's going to be next. We got to be thinking what's coming, where are the trends going in our businesses? How do we stay on top of it and be ready for whatever the next change is going to be?
Yeah, it's we're interviewing agents, and we're hiring a lot of amazing agents as well, like just great personalities, very diverse background, very educated. Just I just can't wait for these agents to really go out there in a big way and make a big difference. But the one thing that we're hearing consistently is that these agents are interviewing 10, 11 brokerages, and they're saying that what we get from Sutton Summit and what Sutton Summit brings to the table is miles ahead of all the other brokerages. And it's great to hear that, but very rewarding. And we work really hard, but we're very, very, very passionate about real estate.
Well, that's great, and that's why you're successful. You're not successful if you don't have some passion. Doesn't matter if you're real estate brokerage, you're a law firm. You have to have some passion. You have to care about what you're doing. You have to care about who you're doing it for, who your clients are. But you're doing it also for not just purchaser and seller clients, but your agents are part of your family, and we do the same thing. We care about our staff. We care about our life. We hire the best people we can find. And by the way, we're looking to hire another law clerk. We need someone that can really handle corporate commercial work. If you know anybody, hear anybody, or someone listens to this that's looking for a change in position. We're also looking for another associate lawyer. We're ready to groom the next great associate lawyer to add to our team.
Amazing.
But we want to hire. We hire someone. We talked about this before. We hire someone. We want to hire them for life. We don't want to hire them for a year or two and then move on. We look at everybody we hire. We say, we want you to come. We want you to spend your whole professional life with us and grow with us. And I think it's those attitudes and those passions that help our respective firms grow. I think we should talk a little more about this in our next podcast.
Another 3-hour-long conversation, right? But staffing as a business owner, oh my God, it's so crucial. Take your time hiring, fire quickly, right? And make sure that culture fit is 100% bang on, because that's the most important.
Yep.
David, always a pleasure. So much fun recording these with you. I can't wait for podcast number 4. And again, it's going to be a continuation of the same topic today. What happens when a transaction does not close? We will see everybody next Wednesday. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to it.
Thanks, David. Everybody, get out there, do some business, but stay safe. Take care.
Stay safe.
Okay.
Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market and dive deep to understand the issues affecting buyers, sellers, investors, and businesses. If you love real estate as much as we do, sit back, relax, and gain an insider's edge to the exciting world of real estate. David Gorski is a broker and the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, a powerhouse brokerage providing guidance to over 180 realtors. And David Korman is a partner at Kormans LLP, a respected law firm specializing in residential and commercial real estate transactions, with offices located in Toronto, Mississauga, and Markham.